need no education.
Hey, hey, hey.
Hello, my friend. How are you?
Good, I'm good. I'm excited about this episode as the for our viewers, it's the first day of school, uh
Mm-hmm.
or back to school,
Yep.
however you want to frame it, but I'm excited that how are you this morning?
Good, good. But going, the first day of school, no matter how old you are, and even if you don't have children, because our kiddos are grown up. I mean, George still has his first. Well, no, you still have one more,
My young
right?
so Saber graduated a year early last year.
Oh, that's right. That's right. That's
He did
right.
year
Yes.
high school career, so he finished his senior year over the summer. So he's fully graduated. He's done. Um,
Yeah.
so I'll be honest with you. I took my wife. She takes the VRE, the train into DC
Uh
for work.
huh.
So I just drop her off in the mornings, and generally, I would wake up a little bit earlier to take Saber to school when he wasn't driving, and then drop her off. So because I wanted to hold on to the car, so it's not parked at the station or at the
Mhm.
um, I'll be honest with you, I didn't miss waking up a little bit earlier. I definitely enjoyed sleeping a little bit longer because her schedule was a little bit behind his because high school starts pretty early.
Yeah, yeah. That early start can is shocking because I remember when we'd have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning in George's first 2 years, driving him to school, at old dark 30. And but I appreciated that time because it was, one-on-one time. And as they get older, especially when they become teenagers, you don't get that one-on-one time. So I
Mhm.
appreciated it, even though sometimes, that's when they're moodiest, right, in the morning.
Very cool. Yeah,
But on
like,
that rare occasion, I'd have a great
yeah,
conversation.
exactly.
Uh,
We wake in the second half of the day for he was in
but,
his
it's still that feeling, and I can't I know I still have it. I know because we were in education that we have a different, reaction than most people, but I do think there is something, people connect to when they think of, back to, or, the first day of school. When you're going through the grocery store and you see all the signs, summer's over and, we're starting, school starting again.
yeah,
It's a shift from summer to now, the school year and all the activities, all the things that come with a school year,
yeah,
you know, good or bad. But, there's still a connection that we all feel to that that feeling, whether it's, the end of
yeah,
summer or oh, excitement, school year starts. I get to go, shopping
yeah,
for school supplies. I get to go. I
yeah,
for me, I enjoyed um the clothes shopping and all the school supplies, packing my backpack and the smell
yeah,
of all the new
yeah,
notepads and pencils. And when you're
yeah,
little, I still remember the smell of crayons. And right, so
yeah.
there's a lot of
Yeah,
good
it's really
memories that come, I think, mostly.
no, no, I think it's really cool and like for everyone, for most people, I think it's exciting and they're jazzed up about it. And I was driving back, and by the time I dropped her off and was coming back to our place, you see the younger kids at the bus stops, so the buses pulling in and so forth, and everybody got, kids got their book bags, like new book bags, or depending on a person's situation, you often like also buy my might get new clothes, and it's a new beginning for children every year. Is that, oh, well, who am I going to have as what teachers am I going to,
Mhm.
or who am I going to
Yep.
sit with? Who are going to be my new friends, or some friends I might not have seen over the summer? How have they been? And kids change over the year. And I remember as a teacher, it was also exciting that first day or even that first week of school as you're getting to know the new kids you're going to teach in class. And every year is different. Like it's like a new season, like, like with the sporting events, a fresh start
Mhm.
for everyone. So it's just something really cool about you know getting a new start every academic year. It's interesting, and so
I
I
think
just
that's Oh,
yeah.
go ahead, sorry. Oh, no, I think that's what it is. It's that fresh start, right? Like, okay, I'm going, this year is going to be better,
Yeah,
or, I hope this year will be just as good as last year.
yeah,
And there's a lot of anticipation and excitement,
yeah,
and hope that comes with the beginning of each new year.
yeah,
And I think that just kind of speaks to, human beings in general. I mean, I think in general, we're generally positive, and
yeah,
we're hopeful, and the school year, the beginning of the school year is just sort of this feeling we all get, that hey, this is going to be, um there's all these opportunities, right? But we also know that there are a lot of young people who don't feel that way, and
yeah,
there's more negative feelings that come with the beginning of school, and that's something
yeah,
that's always a concern, right? Because you want, and I think as educators, we we all, both you and I, prepared our classrooms, got it, ready, and the excitement, that anticipation of, hearing the bell, and
yeah,
then your students come into the classroom. I mean, there's just a lot of excitement, but you're always, looking and scanning, the class. Okay, who's, where,
yeah,
uh, you're just kind of getting a feel for, all the different personalities, and, just kind of getting that, what's the energy going to be like in my classroom
yeah.
this year,
No,
right?
that's
And
right. It's
every year it changes.
every year it changes and every class is different, right? I mean,
Hmm.
it's I've taught block schedule, which was like longer, so you have maybe three classes in the day, school day, and like one block off. So for planning, but I've also taught in settings where it was 7 periods, so you would get 5 year on and two off for planning. And sometimes actually, I had one year I remember I had to teach six, and I only had one plan, like because we had a teacher shortage and so forth. There is, but you're right. Every year is different energy, and then every class that you have of kids is a different dynamic, right? And teachers have to be really nimble and agile and become very good at adjusting our tones and how we engage and how we manage our classroom based on the vibe in that classroom, right? That's something that I think if you're not a practitioner, it's really, I don't think folks really have a true appreciation of the skill set it requires
Mm.
to manage people, manage to and be really quick about it, right? Because you get them, and the next group comes in, the next group comes in, and
Mhm.
just have to do quick adjustments and so forth. Um,
Well, up the higher grades are different than the elementary, right? Because you
the
teach
same
all
kids,
subjects,
yes,
right? With the exception of maybe, PE and music,
right,
um, and specialties,
yes,
right? But for the most part, you're teaching
yeah,
all the subjects, and your break is your bathroom break. Planning
yes,
is in the morning and in the evening,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And but it is that, you're I mean, I had a class of, 20 to 25 first graders, right? So you're the the energy is really important in the first
yeah,
month, is really about, there's teaching going on, but it really is about learning who your students are,
yeah,
um, getting to know them, their families,
yeah,
and building those relationships, because no child is going to respond and listen to you if
yeah,
they don't trust you, they
yeah,
don't like you, right? I mean, those that really is and also establishing the expectation and the routines, right?
yes, yeah.
Um, so the first month is probably the most important month, in determining whether or not you're going to have a successful or unsuccessful year.
Right, exactly. And I think
Right.
one thing you touched on is so important is about those establishing those relationships, getting to know your students, building that trust, but also with families. Um, and that's it looks different, right, in the education continuum because Generally speaking, parents and families are more engaged in earlier years because they know their children are still getting used to school. Uh, so you generally have a larger level of engagement because you're more protective of your children. Not to say you're not in the entire continuum, but you feel more engaged. And the dynamics in early learning, pre-K through say third grade, is very different, and then evolves with fourth, fifth, and sixth grade, and then it also evolves a lot in seventh and eighth grade, and evolves in high school and so forth. There's different dynamics, um, and how you engage and so forth. So I taught eighth grade for 10 years. Once in a while, I would pick up a sixth grade or seventh grade section as well, and saw the very differences. But I just talking to a
Mm.
lot of practitioners across the continuum and trying to improve my practice is that the family engagement was so key, and knowing that hey, children generally don't want their parents too involved after a certain age, like after seventh gradish, and so they're like, hey, can you just back off, right? They're kind of entering adolescence phase. They want more space. Even if a family really wants to be engaged, children themselves also want some of a distance, and they might not be telling their parents too much about what's happening in schools, as the excitability is different. The energy is different in early years, where you go in elementary school, you might go in, you talk about your school day more, and you sit down with your parent and read and so forth. So it's very different, and the engagement is very different. And as Secretary of Education, when I was talking to students, I mean teachers as well, I noticed that when you talked about different strategy and how to engage families, that looks different too in early years versus middle years versus secondary years. It looks very, very different. But in a nutshell, one thing to improve my practice I did was try to think of ways in the early days to engage as many parents and families as possible in a positive way, because that's the strategy that picked up over, observing other mentors and practitioners to see, okay, if you build on that positive relationship early on with families, then if you have any kind of issues that come up during the school year, you've they're much you have a much easier time navigating those. Uh,
Mhm.
One, building the trust with the students, but also working on family engagement is so key. So, and doing that early on, right in that
Mhm.
first couple of days of school, being very proactive about it and investing in that time early generally paid huge dividends for the remainder of the school year.
You learn as you through the years, as a teacher, each year you get better at it. You know, your first couple years, you really, it's a lot of, growing pains, right? You just, you kind of, there's so many moments when you're like, oh God, I should have,
Yeah,
I, right? But then you learn to be more proactive, right? You're like, okay, how do I avoid this, big mistake last year? How do I, fix this year? And each year, you build, and we affectionately refer to it in teaching, the toolkit, right? You build your toolkit, and you have all these different tools that you can, use, and you pick from to fix every problem, right?
yeah,
And but it is really that time to learn and grow. And I sometimes see, young teachers, new teachers, not all of them are young, and um, we have a lot of, career switchers in teaching.
yeah,
And but there is, um, that because there just seems sometimes that there's not as much patience and grace, right,
yeah,
with
yeah,
teachers, and making the mistakes and doing, uh, trying to each year, do better.
yes,
You feel that there are more and more teachers who are just like, yeah, okay, after the first, second year, if this doesn't get easier, I'm
yeah,
gone. And that's why you see so many young teachers, new teachers leave after the third year. I think it's something like,
yeah.
50 to 60% now.
They did, yeah. So,
Teachers,
yeah, I don't know
and
if
then
I
we don't want to
go
go
into
too much into,
yeah,
the concerns about teaching, but I think that's something, when we're talking about this
Yeah.
new year, that's always something that, you eventually
Yeah.
start
And I
talking
think in
about.
this episode, we'll focus on teachers, right? And we'll talk
Mhm.
about tension because there's a lot of, concerns that I have. The first 5 years is really tough for the teachers in the profession, and we lose a lot, you said, and we'll get dive into that because this episode focusing on the first day of school, back to school for children. Then next episode we'll talk about teachers, and we also have to talk about school administrators too. But
Mm.
one of the things I don't know what you used to do, but in my first year of teaching, I specifically remember because you went back a little bit earlier uh, to do professional development. Generally teachers go back about a week earlier to set up their classrooms or get some PD in, get ready for the new school year. I remember that first week in before I had any children in my class and so forth as a first year teacher. I must have fixed my desks and decorated the classroom like 50 times. I still remember it's still like a kind of a trauma in my mind. Like I remember because I had these purple textbooks and man, I was teaching pre-algebra, and I had multiple plannings, right? I had like 4 plannings that year because the first few years you're still kind of you know if you're dual certified. I had 4 plannings, but you know uh, just kind of thinking about. But I spent so much time on desks, man, setting up desks and textbooks and should it be this way and this way. And I remember some of the teachers were like laughing at me. They're in a nice way. They were, you kind of they're looking at you. They're like, "Oh, this guy, what are you doing?" Because you don't know. You can, yeah. I mean, teacher preparation courses are great and stuff, but and student teaching is great. But when you're on your own as a teacher, and they say go, right here, that's rough because it's like things that you just don't think about or learn about. And I'm pretty good at content and mathematics, so content has never been an issue. But it was all about, okay, well, those little technical things that setting up seating charts and seating structure matters.
Mhm.
But
Well,
like
yeah.
it's an art. Like it's something that you can, yeah. I don't know if it's an art or science or both. It can be true, but it takes like so much creativity and thinking, and every classroom is different. And how do you adjust? Uh, you know, and how do you set up your classroom? Because space and like the boards and stuff are currency too, right? You want to display student work, but you also want to display other things that are required and so forth. And thinking all through that was interesting because it took me a couple of years to really improve on that and really get comfortable in just setting up the class for the first day of school and getting going because it takes a lot of creativity. And then by the time later in the years you're like, oh, I'm like, whatever, I'm not going to spend too much energy
Mm.
and overthinking it. But I remember the very first year teaching, before I even met any of the children, just setting up and having that you know nervousness. I still get that feeling sometimes. I'm like, hey, that you're so anxious to
Mhm.
get going. And I think about her. Yeah, yes, the teachers who are veteran teachers are coming back. They know they've really kind of mastered how they want to do things and they improve their craft every year. But those novice teachers that are entering in, I think about them too. I'm like, what is, those days come back. That hey, how are they going to engage and so forth? So
I think it's so interesting that you as a middle school teacher spent so much time in there and with thinking about your classroom because I felt, it was, elementary school teachers that focused more on their classroom because they spent so much time with their students. But I think that that's really um that's that's great to hear because I think, many um, no one really thinks about how much time a teacher takes to prepare their classroom because
mhm,
there's so much that you take in. I'm not every teacher does, but I think those that do, it's really about setting the stage right for the year. And what kind of what do you want that initial when your students come into their classroom? You want them to it's a space you want them to be in,
Right.
even though it's for a short period of time. But it's a you want to create, a feeling like, hey, you belong here. I want you to feel like this is your space to learn. Even though we're going to, just, talk about, algebra for, 45 minutes.
Right. Right.
I want you to want to be here and feel like this was that this was created just for you.
Yeah.
Because I
Yeah.
remember, you know, I would spend hours reorganizing my library. To me, it wasn't just enough to put books on a shelf.
Yeah.
It was, how do you create? I mean, I just think literacy is so important, and the sooner you can draw
Yeah.
children into a space where there's, books to read or text or something where they can, pick up and, look at the pictures and then start looking at these words and
Yeah.
hey, wanting to know what does that say.
Yeah.
And so it was, picking the right colors, organizing the books in a certain way so that it was inviting, putting some books in a basket, putting some books, where the spine was, facing, this way, or that they were stacked a certain way, or, that there were other things that were inviting them,
Yeah.
to want to be in this particular space, but also thinking about where if where they could go to be calm. And so, so
Yeah.
there was this balance of learning
Yeah.
and development,
Yeah.
right? Knowing that there are going to be times when children just need to go somewhere quiet, or
Yeah.
where and I loved bringing um pillows and lighting. I mean, it was
Yeah.
a little bit more than usual, I would say, but from a, not just from a learning perspective, but from a developmental perspective,
Yeah.
children want to know that this is a place to learn, but
Yeah.
this is also a place to grow
Right.
and to be thoughtful about that. Like I had oh gosh, I had, without spending too much time and going into each year that I
Yeah.
taught. But
Yeah.
there would always be a project. There would always be something that we were working on together at the end of the day. And who knew, I was developing, those that STEM teacher in me, right? Before STEM was STEM.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but it was just that awareness that when they're working on something together, they
Yeah.
are building relationships and they're learning. And part of it was just, again, being that elementary, that first grade teacher, that your students were spending so much of their time in
Yeah.
your classroom, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um and that all the more reason to make it someplace where they want to feel happy and want to spend time in.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean,
Exactly.
then a lot of thought every year. I mean, every summer, I spent my summer just collecting more stuff
Yeah.
to put into. I mean, and I say more stuff because I never got rid of stuff.
No, no, yeah. Yeah. No, I still have like, yeah, I mean,
Oh, I
so
still have bins. I don't know what to do with those bins. I
I know,
still have bins.
I know, I still have bins of posters from all different things, and like when you get like a thank you card from,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Those are the best.
I know they're still in a box, just like but yeah, you should never want to throw anything away because it's like it's sentimental to you and stuff, and
Mhm.
so yeah, it just and it kind of brings back the memories that hey, what was
Mhm.
going on that year because like it becomes after you've been teaching for so long, years kind of blend in and become a blur. But that yeah, some things definitely stick out, and the first day of school, like I know children going back, and I feel for the teachers that are going back because you have to go through procedures, right? Here's the school procedures, and here's your schedule, and going through that. And then there's all kinds of other pressures during training that we're going to introduce some new technology or new program because every year
Mhm.
there's something new that a school wanted
Yeah.
you to do. So that's kind of that. It's a very interesting dynamic because things just move so fast.
Mhm.
Generally speaking, on a regular school day, they move fast, but especially that first day or first week, things just fly by so fast. And you feel like time is currency and you have to do so much. And time management, in addition to space management, is also you have to like get really creative and so forth. And what I felt like,
Mhm.
my year 7, 8 year in, like you can kind of like slow down time a little bit. You can manage it better, right? So I know in my early years, as I was observing and looking at other teachers and how they're handling that, I think when you become a more seasoned practitioner, you know how to also kind of slow things down a little bit, breathe a little bit, and you feel a little bit more looser to say, hey, I can, because you become more confident, right? Because you know that expect the unexpected, but you also know what's kind of coming and so forth. For example, like with students acting up and discipline issues, they generally don't start until the second or third week, right? The first week is the honeymoon period. Everybody's on their best. The real personalities generally came out for the most part that second week. Uh,
Mhm.
and you knew that, right? As a seasoned teacher, you also knew that, hey, first week is going to be, students are feeling you out. You're figuring out, okay, how they operate and navigate. But when that second week hits, okay, be ready and be prepared to see, okay, who's really going to, you know, kind of, challenge you a little bit to say, okay, what can I get away with and what can I do and so forth. So that's a really interesting dynamic too. But I just felt like, that year 7, 8, 9, 10, like I actually look forward to going back every year because I'm like, oh, I got this and I'm gonna take it to a next level, right? You could do more things because you just become more and more comfortable as a practitioner. And I think that if you've been teaching in a school for a while and built a reputation, so the incoming students that are coming, they might not have had you as a teacher, but they've also heard about you. So I taught, many siblings that came through and so forth. So
Mhm.
they're also, students also feel a bit more comfortable going in. Hey, I know the reputation of this teacher and so forth, and I can, navigate their classroom. Because children, I think, there's so much to deal with, right? What locker they're gonna have and what's their combination, and trying to remember their schedule.
Mm.
And but what's really also important is like who are they sitting with in class? Who is somebody that they like or don't like, and do they have that dynamic and trust with the teacher? And what is their lunch schedule and how is lunch going to be assigned? Are they assigned seats or do they get a choice to sit with their friends? So there's just a lot that goes on in the first week that
Mhm.
is they're really settling in. So it's very interesting. Like you could do a whole movie about just the first day of school, right? Just the first day of school. Yeah,
I mean, I don't think people, while you were sharing all this, I wanted to ask you, what do you remember? What were the feelings? What was the inspiration that made you want to become a teacher?
yeah, I do.
Yeah, because I think that is something I always revisited when I every at the start of the school year. That reminder, right?
Yeah,
This is why I'm doing this.
yeah. What was yours? What
Well,
made
what
you?
was yours?
What was mine?
Yeah.
It was a moment in Iraq when I was deployed actually overseas.
Mhm.
War going on, and so I was working as a litigation paralegal at a law firm in DC, and I loved that was a great job. Salary was good. They actually were going to pay for my law school to go to GW Law because I did my undergrad at GW and George Washington University, and
Mhm. Mhm.
I want to go to law school there too. Um, uh, and I was on the track of just a corporate law firm and did a lot of cool cases and stuff. But I don't know, something was missing, right? Like something was missing. But then I get deployed. The war's going on in Iraq. My wife was pregnant with Zane, the firstborn. She was 7.5 months pregnant when I got deployed. It was a tough time for us, but I do specifically remember because war's going on, right? and there was like schools were disrupted, universities were disrupted. When we had gone into Iraq, we'd actually taken over to set up a base at a university called Ad-Dimana University. So it was a sister college to the University of Baghdad. It was in a city called Ad-Dimaniya, which is about 2 hours away from Baghdad. So that was I spent a lot of time there, but I traveled across the country, and so when you go out and about, my job kind of required interacting with the local community. Um, so in those interactions, I do remember, children would come up and we would give them MREs, and there was no schooling going on, right? There's no schools going on. A lot of children were playing barefoot on the ground or playing soccer or just hanging out and so forth. And so I do remember those moments, and specifically, I'm like, started thinking about wouldn't it be cool to do something like be a teacher, because there's so much chaos and disruption, and that'd be so cool. And I don't know why, but I found myself really good at just interacting with people in general, but especially young people, because when young people, right? Okay, I think that their context of the world and their perspective is very different, especially in like a war torn situation. Because adults, you have those tensions, right? Adults, there was a lot of tensions because they are like, hey, American troops are here, they're invading thing. We just got rid of a dictatorship, which was bad. And so there was tension there. But when the kids, the interactions were very different. It's hard to explain because kids were, I think they let their guard down generally, and they approached you, right? Like I would be sitting in
Mhm.
a, and kids would just come up and they're like, hey, and but they're broken English or whatever they had heard from music or movies, and so they try to communicate with you, right? um so that was really really cool. So that got my brain swirling, and I specifically remember those moments. And I would write to my wife, because this is back in 2003. We didn't really, unless you got like once in a while was able to use a satellite phone, or we didn't have email access until much later on. He would still do old school, like writing letters, see if they got there to them. It took a couple of weeks. Then eventually I got email and so forth set up. But I would tell my wife, I'm like, hey, you know what? I'm just thinking, like, we got our kid on the way, and I'm thinking, I think I'm not happy at the law firm. Like, I think I want to do something different, and I think I want to explore going into teaching. So she
Mm.
was supportive about that. She's like, yeah, let's just, come back alive first, and we'll talk about it. So, but yeah, that
Mm.
was, it's weird. But I don't think, if I hadn't had that experience of getting deployed and so forth, I don't think I would have gone into teaching. I don't know, probably not, because I was just in that one track mindset for so long that, hey, I want to be a lawyer, make a bunch of money, and be a corporate lawyer. And I was good at it. I would just go, right. Um, and then all of a sudden the deployment happened. It changed everything, um, perspective on life and so forth. Too, and I'm in a way, I look back at it. I'm glad that experience happened, because I would have never gone, probably never would have gone into education. Yeah. What?
Wow. And so what well, I thought education, because I was also kind of on another track. I was working on Capitol Hill. I was deciding, whether or not I wanted to go to law school, or law school was I was leaning towards law school. I was leaning towards the University of Virginia. And I was working for a Congresswoman Patsy Mink from Hawaii, who had a huge influence on education. She was one of the authors of Title IX,
Yeah.
so pretty, you know, pretty significant, right? Probably one of the most significant pieces of legislation. Not to mention also one of the most controversial pieces of legislation still
Yeah.
today, right?
Yeah.
Um, but it was pretty straightforward, in terms of, the funding. Federal funds would be equally distributed to, male, female, and especially in sports, this was pretty significant, right?
Yeah.
And so the impact was enormous in terms of, women um, and pursuing, higher education, and being able to play sports. And so I was watching all of this and thinking, I really feel the greatest impact a person can make is in education,
Yeah.
right? And I didn't necessarily see myself being all a teacher always,
Yeah.
but being involved in how can we make education better and give every child,
Yeah.
the opportunities to really fulfill their potential. I mean, because and as a teacher and going into, so I thought going into the classroom was an important part of that experience and understanding. If I wanted to make an impact, I really needed to understand the classroom
Yeah.
and take and learn how to work with children, work with families, and even work with community partners, right? Because when you plan field trips, where are you going to go? Who are you going to go? How are you going to pay for it? So there's a lot involved in an actual teaching that gives you a really good idea and understanding. That's why, when you and I talk about speaking with a practitioner's heart, until you have practiced education and educating, young minds,
Yeah.
you have a limited perspective, and I mean, like, really investing year in and year out, right? Taking that knowledge, that experience, and taking it to the next level, and how can I use this knowledge to better to understand, be a voice to change and make it better.
Yeah.
And and I didn't see law doing that. I was seeing my friends coming out of law school because every year I'd postpone it. I'm like, oh, yeah, maybe next year, maybe next year, maybe next year. And I just couldn't, I didn't feel it. I was like, God, they were, um, it was, I could just knew it wasn't something that would make me happy,
Yeah.
you know?
That's it. Yeah.
Financially secure for sure,
Yeah.
but, I didn't think it was gonna make me happy. So, yeah, and I think every year, at the beginning of each year was that reminder, especially after a year that was more challenging.
Yeah.
It's like, "Okay, I really wanna go back, and this is what and this is why I'm doing it." Always going back to that why, but at the same time, I always knew that I wanted to do more, and I was and this is kind of where you and I, connected in just our seeing politics
Yeah.
as, a place to be involved without necessarily getting too political.
Right.
'Cause
Exactly.
there's a lot of danger in getting and becoming too political,
Yeah.
because then, I mean, politics is necessary to achieve change,
Yeah.
but when you get too political, it can be very dangerous and toxic.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
just finding that right space, and having that background on the Hill, and
Yeah.
then going into teaching, but then also seeing opportunities to teach in different spaces. So at the college level, and then being innovative and creating an actual program. So, we're developing the first STEM early learning program, going into early learning schools to develop
Yeah.
uh, curriculum. So it's just all these little pieces, all these little pieces to this puzzle that would eventually, and there's still pieces that I'm putting together to create this, uh, to what that my purpose is in education. But
Yeah.
I think, teaching was definitely part of it, and it's something that I will always look back on as an important part of my life that really gave me certainty
Yeah.
of, this experience, and it's so important, and we need to do so much more to elevate these experiences, this classroom school experience for all children.
Yep. Sounds good. No, that's a beautiful story. Thanks for sharing that. And it's really interesting to do that. It's a good segue to our next episode. As we wrap up this one. This one was focused on the first day of school, welcoming students back to school, getting a fresh start to a new school year. And then, in the next upcoming episode, we'll focus on teachers in general. So at the macro level and talk about a lot of cool issues. So we'll
Mm.
do next time.
All right. Well, always a great conversation, and looking forward to the next one. And really looking also forward to bringing other people into this conversation because I think that's something, as we are getting more comfortable in this podcast space, right? I think it's going to be really exciting to start bringing our friends and colleagues
Yeah,
in because we just over the had these great conversations, and now we're putting it out there and doing it in public, which is kind of it's a new experience for the both of us. But I think as we've said in the beginning that it's the conversations that are important, and allowing you know and bringing more people together to have really important conversations around education and the complexities because we are looking for solutions, and solutions are we're only going to find them if we're talking to each other.
sounds good. All right, see you next time.
All right, take care.
We don't need no education.